your wife and I were working together on a transaction. So she's in real estate, I'm in the mortgage business.
Yeah.
And it was June, late June, and I asked her, what are you doing for July 4th? So I'm going to the beach. Every year I try to read something patriotic, educate myself. She's like, oh, well, you have to read my husband's book. I go, really? Who's your husband? She's like, you've never heard of him. I go, is that right? I go, what book? So she tells me, she's like, and I said, what's it about? She's like, you're just going to have to read it. And I was like, what? She's like, greatest story never told. And I read it on the flight home. So it's not an overly large book. I was like, no, it's for a 3-hour flight, whatever it was. And I read it and Tom, I was literally at baggage claim as the bags were coming out, just still reading the books. I didn't finish it quite on the plane. It was so good, I couldn't put it down. And that last page, like I've never seen a book where the last page just hits you in the face. I was like, wow, it was awesome. So super pumped. I've been waiting for this moment since last July, and here it is, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 months later. So thank you for joining. Thanks for coming today. So tell me this, what do we can talk about anything you want. I have lots of questions, but what do you want? Like, tell me about the inspiration, because I know there's a previous book you wrote. Tell me all about whatever you want to tell me about.
Well, the main thing, I was under a lot of security things. And I worked later I went to work for E-Systems, which also has a security thing. And I did that also. I worked on avionics on aircraft. And also, I've been on Air Force One. I've been on the Saudi Kings plane. Both of those come in at E-Systems down at Greenville. Got a big airport. You won't believe how big an airport is at Greenville, but it's mostly for E-Systems. It's now called L3. Raytheon bought them out, bought out E-Systems. Then they said Raytheon had too much in government control, that they sold it out to L3, another company now that runs the place down there. And if you've never been to Greenville, go out to the municipal airport, and you ain't gonna believe the big aircraft that you see on the field. And a lot of government, a lot of spy planes down there, things like that they work on. Avionics on Air Force One, avionics on the Kings, Saudi Arabia's plane, things like that, And but my background originally, I went to a technical high school in Nashville, and when I graduated, I didn't have nothing to do, and they were advertising a school down here in Dallas, so I went to the representative that was representing the school down here was Metropolitan Institute of Technology. It was an advanced thing and also getting into computers starting. I said, well, I think I'll do that. So, here I am, 19-year-old high school graduate, 136 pounds, Yeah. So I come to Texas, drove down here, got to Texarkana. I didn't want to. It's getting late, so I spent the night. 49 Plymouth is what I'm driving at. It's a teenager, So anyway, I got to Texarkana, so I spent the night, because when I come to Texas, I want to see all them old derricks, them big ranches with the cowboys, with the cowboy hats on and everything like that. And I was so disappointed all the way to Dallas. It just green, just like it was everywhere. So because
should have gone to Fort Worth.
Huh?
Should have gone to Fort Worth.
I should have gone further now. I finally did. I finally seen everything I wanted to see and everything. But that was my first experience coming into Texas and everything.
The 19-year-old kid, go to the technical school. I think, and I don't remember the prior name, but it became UTA, right? The school you went to?
Well, Metropolitan Institute of Technology was technical school, and then later I went to it's called Arlington State College that time, and Texas A&M was trying to take over, so the University of Texas said, no, we're going to do it. So that's when University of Texas took over Arlington, became UTA. And I was on a program with E-Systems at the time. I started work from E-Systems in '63. I worked at Curtis Mathis until they moved to Athens, the main thing, and then I went to work for TI. And when I got into TI, they offered a co-op program. So I got on that. You go a semester and you work a semester. TI was real, and they paid for everything. So I just But it was also because when I started working for TI, I was an engineering tech for them. Started working on classified contracts right off the bat because I had just, I mean, I looked like a kid, and and so anyway, TI knew my knowledge more than anything, so they put me on some of their.
So is this something you actually aspired to do? Like when you got there, thought I'm doing this, or was it more just kind of fell in your lap and you were at the right place, right time for that type of?
Right place, right time, and also the knowledge and everything. So, yeah, it was. It's something else. I went to work for TI and everything, and uh, they do all the background checks and everything. To make sure that you qualify. So anyway, that's what I did.
So you were there for a handful of years, and I don't know if we would need to back up real quick because you mentioned that obviously who we all are is how you're raised and who your familial status as you grow up certainly develops and creates your character of who you are and what you do. So I know growing up, you've written a prior book that you said you wrote many years ago. It sounds like.
Yes.
And then it's now on my to-read list. I forgot about it because, again, I reread your book last night in preparation for this, and I was like, man, I forgot that there was another book. So tell me a little bit about it, as much as you'd like to share with us. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
Okay, the first book, excuse me, it's called Silent Tears. Right after World War II, my dad divorced my mother about 1946, right after he got back, everything.
You would have been 6, 7 years old?
5.
5 years old?
Well, okay. Probably about 4 when I got a divorce. I remember getting in an old car with him and going to his folks' place, all my other, but I didn't realize that who these people were or nothing like that. But he was named after, his dad was Thomas J. Gillespie, Sr. He was junior. I'm the third, and I have a son that's the fourth down in Texas A&M. He teaches down there, and so I'm real proud of him. But anyway, the book Silent Tears, I wrote that in 1977, but I didn't want to put it out because I didn't want my mother to know what we really went through. Was in an orphanage from age 5 to 10. 1947 to 1952.
And to be clear, your mom was still alive. It's just dad left and mom couldn't swing raising 3 boys.
She put us in a Baptist orphanage home. The aunts wanted to split us up and adopt each one of us, but mother didn't want that. She didn't want to split us. So she put us out there as an alternative. And then, so Silent Tears is based on my experience Baptist orphans. And it's different. It's not what kids go through now. At that time, you had a matron over a building, a whole bunch of kids, and things were tough. All these kids coming in there, a lot of them were already there, and I come in later. Then the other kids come in later also. But it was quite an experience in my life, and that's what made me. As I grew up, like I said. Tanya Lester was 19 years old at the time, and I was police chief in Salina. So I met her. We lived together, but she was real intelligent. She, like I said, 19 years old, probably already had a degree from UTA. Smart. And so she knew things were bothering me. She said, write them down. So I wrote them down. She worked nights at this place while she's also doing other things. And she'll type up the pages to it, typed it all up. And I had the book. And so I felt a lot better after I got it off my mind and got it on paper. And but I didn't want my mother to know what we went through, so I didn't publish the book until 21, 22, 23.
I can only imagine. I know you referenced fighting. Had to be tough. Had to take care of your own, protect your brothers. Your brothers protected you. And I remember there was that. Not saying it was funny, but you mentioned when you enter a fight situation, you assess: is it rules or no rules? And I got a little kick out of that. And said the guy comes out and sucker punches you, you thought in your head, okay, no rules, and
Yeah.
so it's again eye opening. I'll admit I've never been in a fight. I punched my best friend once in Boy Scouts in the stomach because he tripped me in front of everybody, and that was the only extent of the fight I've ever had. So when I hear, I can't relate, and certainly not wanting to do that, but I know it makes you who you are, and it certainly helped you in this. As we go through this story and the progression, it made you who you are, and it put you in that position to do what you did.
Yeah. Well, my mother got remarried again in 52, and so they got us out of the orphans then, because my daddy was in the 101st Airborne. Well, he was my stepfather, but we never used that term. It's our daddy. And, like, I'm married now and have some daughters, and they're my daughters, and I'm their daddy, and they know it. So anyway, I don't like that term, stepfather, stepdad, nothing like that, and I won't stand to hear anyway. And I have two sons that I've adopted. I got one that's natural. That's the one that's working down at Texas A&M. So anyway, that's. So
now we fast forward back to you being a young whippersnapper in your early mid-20s, I want to say, when the draft happened, and what's happening this whole time. I know that.
Okay.
My dad was drafted as well, but you at the time I think were working for TI. Texas Instruments.
I worked for TI for about 3 years, and my ex-wife, bless her soul, she passed now. She got pregnant by somebody else, and I knew about it. And so anyway, we divorced. And at that time, the Vietnam was going real strong, so she turns me into the draft board, and I get drafted. And I told TI, I said, look, I said, they're fixing to send me. I'm going in the Army and going to the basic institute. I said, we'll get you exempted because you're on government products. At the time, F-111 aircraft was new, and we developed an infrared system for the aircraft, so it was a lot easier to spot targets at night and everything. And so anyway, that's what I was working on.
And that was 1968, correct? When you got drafted, or was it?
No, I have to go back through all this. Yeah,
I wrote it down. We can look.
Yeah. Anyway, it was in '68, and I got drafted. I went in and went through all the basics, and I called them and told them, I said, you better hurry up and get me exempted. I said, I'm fixing to have to jump out of an airplane, and I don't want to. Make a long story short, went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where my daddy was stationed. And, but I mean, so anyway, I got thrown out of an aircraft. I didn't want to go, but line behind me pushed me out. And I can understand why they call the 101st a screaming eagle. Screamed all the way to the ground.
I could imagine.
But anyway, after that, I called them. I told them, I said, look, I've been through everything in the world I need to do. I said, go ahead and get back. They said, well, your exemption's coming through. And I got orders to go to Vietnam. Landed at Tom Gillespie Air Force Base in Vietnam. That's where all incoming, everything goes through that base at that time. And so as soon as I got off the plane, the sergeant said, Gillespie. I said, yeah. He said, I don't know who you know, but you're going back to the States. I said, well, if you don't mind, I'll get on this aircraft right here. He said, no, you won't. He said, you're mine for 30 days.
So you arrived, I think it was June of '69, am I right?
Yeah.
So June of '69, you arrived in Vietnam. You know that you got a 30-day sentence, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. And so anyway, I stayed at the base, the Vietcong were still shooting Katyusha rockets into the base. I mean, just every once in a while a rocket is landing somewhere. So I slept under my bed.
No big deal, just rockets every once in a while.
And anyway, after that, been sort of bored, so they won't take a convoy, and they're looking for drivers, any extra drivers, and they come around and asked everybody that was exempted if they want to go on that kind of. And stupid me, I said, yeah, I'll go. I was looking for something to do other than sitting at that base for another 30 days doing nothing. And they said, well, it's a real safe convoy, 400 trucks. Every truck is canvas, square, so you can't tell what's in the back. And I said, okay, well, meantime, I met another guy there, a friend at the base. And I told him, I'm gonna go. He said, oh, are you going with us, son? He said, well, I'm gonna tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna go after her marksman trucks with the necks on it. He said, there's 4 things they haul: ammunition, fuel, medicine, and food. He said, we want the medicine or the food truck. I said, well, why is that? He said, well, as you go down the main highway, we're going up to Dang Dang at that time. That was before the big thing happened at Dang Dang. And we was going up there. What they do is they had snipers all up and down the road, just shooting laser type gun, not laser guns, but fire type bullets. Through the truck trying to set them on fire.
Sure.
Blow 'em up. Yeah, ammo and everything. And so anyway, next morning, Sergeant said, get your trucks. Well, me and my buddy knew which ones we wanted. We got in them. And sure enough, going up the highway, before we left though, they said everybody armor up. Go over.
This was one of my favorite parts.
And I went in there and I knew I wasn't gonna die without fighting. So I got everything I could get, even some grenades.
That's the part that I was like, I can just see you showing up as a driver of a convoy, and the way I picture it, I'm just assuming you had grenades strapped to your chest.
Oh, listen.
Just 5 or 6 handguns. And
like I said, I looked like a Mexican bandito that time, and hey, pictures in the movies, all. And of course, everybody made fun of me and everything. But, I said, well, if I'm going to go, it wasn't that a dangerous convoy. Because it had 7 minutes troop on sides, all up and down the road, ditches that in case something happened. And started going up the road, and I started seeing tracer bullets. Started seeing tracers come out of some trees, and pretty soon here come a gunship in there and just rattle them out. The A4s, jets. I mean, they were good then. And then the helicopter had guns on the side doors, and they come in and rape things. So pretty soon the tree didn't look like it had anything on it. So I said, well, I feel pretty good. Get on up the road, probably about 60, 70 miles, and one of the oil tankers blow up. Then they put a tracer through it, and it blew up. So sergeant come down through there, drivers, get in the ditch, get your guns, shoot or burn them trees. And of course, I laid the ditch and put my gun up over my head. I wasn't about to stick my head up.
Your music training officer would be so proud.
I get to go home pretty soon. So, and then, of course, I felt pretty good about it. And then I said, well, I just think I'll toss a grenade out there. The adrenaline was getting me. So I pulled out a head and tossed a grenade there. Boom, boy, it shook the ground. Sergeant come down there. We got some Vietnamese troops out there. Don't throw them grenades out there. You might get them. And so anyway, who threw that grenade? Nobody knew.
Nobody knew. You looked left. You looked right. Who did that?
Anyway, after that, after that thing, got the truck off the road and everything, we went on up there and come back, no problem. So, and then when I got back, then, I flew back to the States. And since I was working on a particular contract, it's called a 155 millimeter fuse that you could set so it will go off at different heights in the foliage and you get a better spread. Until I developed that proximity fuse that went in there. So anyway, I got back and I had to sign a year's contract with military service, so that takes care of my service record, Now, anyway, I signed the contract. I'll go right back.
Yeah, I think it was less than a month, right? You were back in.
Yeah.
You arrived in June. I think you went home 30 days later in July, and within 30 days, you're right back into
right
in the jungle.
Yeah, but this time I didn't have to do anything. I stayed on base and show them how to set the fuses on a proximity.
And this was a 6-month contract, correct?
Yeah,
So 6 months,
Yeah.
you're in the jungle. Your job's to teach and educate and train how to use this explosive.
well, they said it was 6 months, but it wasn't a whole 6 months, but pretty close to it. So anyway,
So
okay.
you had a roommate. You're on your second term.
Yeah, I'm on the second tour, but usually when I went over this time as a civilian, they gave you officer's credentials.
And I think that's important, right? You're a civilian. It's important to note you're no longer in the service.
No, I wasn't no longer.
The first time you were in the service.
Yes,
So now you're back as a government contractor,
Right.
civilian, now living amongst the officers.
right. And the thing was, it's pay was good too. So, and then being over there, you also had hazardous duty pay, and TI did their best to try to make me happy going over there. But anyway, that's the reason I went back was to, demonstrate how to set the shells, the proximity fuses on the 155 millimeter howitzer. So like I said, it gives you better. You can set it from 25 to 11 feet, and that way, the foliage and everything. If you're using artillery, and the foliage, you get a better spread
Right.
and everything like that. Gives you a better kill zone, as they say. So anyway, I did that, and the guy I was living with was a lieutenant, and he was over. In 1958, they had the northern invasion of the South and everything. What to call it? They got a name for it, but anyway, in 1958 was when they had that, and then it cleared out. So they developed a special group of men. Later, I guess people who developed like it became Green Berets, as they called them later. And but anyway, right after that thing. See, I think it was a tech holiday or something like that, And but anyway, after that, things settled down, and this lieutenant I was rooming with, he was in a special group. So when he worked out, I worked out with him and everything. He let me work out with him. And I said I need to get in shape, and I did. I gained weight, did good.
And this is your buddy, Lieutenant Joyner.
Yeah, Jomer. Yeah. And so, anyway, we came real close friends, and I told him, I said, I'd like to go with you sometime.
And he's in charge of the Special Forces unit that you mentioned, right? He's the commander of that unit.
Yeah. But he had higher ups more in charge of him too.
Of course.
Told him what to do and when to do it and everything. And I said, I sure like to go with you sometime. I said, I'm not going to be here much longer, and I just like to go on one mission just one time.
Just to be clear, Tom, this guy is going away sometimes for weeks at a time.
Right.
Doing whatever special ops do over in the jungles of Vietnam.
Yeah.
And you're saying I'm bored and I want to go.
Well,
just to make sure that's clear for the story. You're begging to go as a civilian, has no business.
I know.
You had 30 days of basic training or whatever it was, and you're thinking, I want a part of this. This is something I want to do.
Yeah, but see, they all come back though. See, that's the thing. I don't know.
Their track record is good.
But they were real good and everything like that. I worked out to him, trained with him. So, and I, like I said, in the best shape I've ever been.
Sure. You're what, late 20s, mid to late 20s at this time? You're bulletproof at this point in life.
Yeah, that's basically it. And then, anyway, before I was to come back, just, he said, I got a mission going to be in and out, looking for some victims of a plane crash. And they said they might have them survivors at a certain location in Cambodia. And I said, oh boy. And he said, we'll go in there, get them real quick and get out. There's like quick in and out and everything.
And this was, to be clear, this was right before you're about to go home. This is month 5 out of the month 6 term. And again, you're a civilian.
Yeah.
And so he's doing you a solid because you guys have been buds. You're begging to go on one of these things. So he's going to say it's quick in and out. Now tell me about Cambodia at the time. So obviously you're in Vietnam.
Okay.
What's
Okay.
significant about Cambodia?
Okay. The North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong used Cambodia, and they had the Ho Chi Minh Trail coming all the way out of North Korea down through Cambodia, which was neutral. You know, we wasn't fighting them or nothing like that. But anyway, the North Vietnamese just loved them and put that trail down through there where they could bring supply and equipment into their people down there. North Vietnam and the Viet Cong was about the same thing. You know, North Vietnam joined in and everything like that at that time. And and then Russia supplied North Vietnam with equipment they rented through down there like that, you know, so they keep the VC ammo up and everything like that. Made it pretty difficult. In 1958, when it's called the Tet Offensive, that the North Vietnamese thing, you know, they tried to, they're going to take over the country, but it didn't work out because America had more, not more people, but better equipment, aircraft, things like that. So that phased out, and that's when they developed this other group. So anyway,
yeah, now we're back in it's December at this point,
okay.
right? December at this point, Cambodia is a neutral territory, so you're not even supposed to be there.
Right.
You guys don't have any qualm with them, but there was a plane crash, and the objective is a quick in and out to get the survivors.
Yeah, if the you know, so anyway, I didn't have any idea about who was in the plane, I was there, and everything like that. I later found out that it was some people, important people coming over from England and America that were going to entertain the troops there at Christmas time. You know, just talk to them, encourage them, everything like that, you know. And pretty important people. And but anyway, they were on the plane that crashed. The plane that crashed was sort of shot down, shot at from the ground, but the rice paddies that was coming in the land. It was C-130 Hercules, the big 4-engine job at that time that hauled most everything into there.
Like a cargo plane. Like in other words, not a fighter jet or not anything that's aggressive. It's just this big hole, and it's one of many from what the story tells.
Right.
It's one of many planes at the time arriving, and it was somewhere back in the order.
Yeah.
And it was suspicious, I guess, because it was the fact that it was the one targeted.
Yeah. And so anyway,
how did you load up for this? You're a civilian.
Huh?
How did you load up? Meaning the last encounter you went on, you were a truck driver and you brought strapped up with grenades and all kinds of ammo. Now you know you're going into the jungle and walking through the jungle and going over to Cambodia. How did you prepare? So as a civilian, like there's just extra guns and grenades hanging around this time?
No, just like everything else, just like one of the troops. Had the guns, plenty of ammunition, and everything. And so I looked just like they did. And when we loaded up, everybody was wondering who I was.
And how many people were there? You say everybody. Who's on this thing? How many special forces?
Probably about 30 total. 2 sergeants, 2 interpreters, 1 Vietnamese, and 1 Russian interpreter, and 2 medics, and the rest were troops. I mean, but they all had been trained the same.
Yeah, this was the best of the best, but they were all able and capable of taking care of themselves.
Right, and so they did good. And anyway, we took the trucks to the border. They started bombing the Ho Chi Minh Trail because it made them all run into little shelters, get off the trail and everything while they were scraping it. And just as soon as it stopped for 1 minute, when we crossed into Cambodia, Joyner had got me to go. He said, if you can go home, so this is probably the last chance you get. He said, it's going to be an in and out. And I said, okay, about a week. And so I said, okay, I'll go for that. At least I have something to tell my grandkids later. So anyway, we get all loaded up, everything. Go in, like I said, everybody was suspicious of me. They didn't know who the hell I was. But I was in a uniform, but with no markings or nothing like that on it. And so they probably thought I was CIA. They didn't know who I was, you know. And Joyner didn't tell nobody. He said he's with me. So nobody questioned it. Sergeants, nobody. They just, you know.
That's wild. And so you guys, when you mentioned the bombing of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, that's us bombing the trail, correct?
Huh?
That's the U.S. military or
Right,
somebody,
right.
some allies bombing that. Is it a scheduled and regular event that they bomb it, or is that for cover for you guys to cross?
That was covered for us to get
Okay.
paid.
So that was coordinated.
Right,
So they
right.
come in, they create the diversion, so to speak.
Yeah.
Clears the trail. You guys then, you're 30 plus guys. You guys, and this is during the night, from what I remember, right? It's all coming.
Yeah.
You're traveling at nighttime.
Yeah.
Trying to lay low and hide 30 dudes.
Yeah.
In a jungle during the day.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
isn't always easy.
And at the time, we had the latest in the night vision glasses too, that the Germans had developed during World War II, and it just improved up to then. And I'm sure it's improved up even more now. So anyway, we had we got across and everything like that. All the guys, I say it's the latest equipment. People call them silencers, but they were called suppressors that you put on the guns at the time. And the idea was to go in there and create as little noise as you could, even when you're shooting people. Like that, you know. So anyway, we got into Cambodia, and so one night while we had fire light and everything, the lieutenant was telling everybody what the mission was, who the people were, and so it just everybody was engaged at that time, and that's when they had snipers, and he got shot with a sniper because he was standing up telling everybody, so take out the leaders is what they wanted to do. And so this guy took him out, and we don't know what kind of equipment he had, but anyway. So anyway, I had a little F-111 device that I was showing also to pilots at the field besides that. And I had a little device that you could still look at night with infrared. We spotted the snipers, and these guys killed him.
And you had that because of who you were as a contractor,
Right.
What you've been working
Right.
on. This wasn't standard issue. This
No.
was something that thankfully Tom was there, and Tom had
Yeah.
this in your backpack.
That
So because at night, for whatever reason, you guys couldn't identify where the shot came from.
right.
So in that, to also be clear, Lieutenant Joyner was your buddy.
Yes.
This was your roommate. He was
Yeah.
the one in charge of this mission.
Yeah.
It's at night. He's starting to tell the troops kind of, hey, we're the objective here to go get survivors.
Yeah.
And so from that, he goes down. I think you mentioned that you just knew instantly that he was gone. It wasn't a question at that point.
Right. It wasn't a question. Like I said, nobody knew who I was. And I knew what the mission was and everything like that.
Because Lieutenant Joyner confided in you, I think the day before, right? Like
Yes.
you guys were roommates, you getting ready, you knew everything. So to be
Right.
very clear, you knew everything and what the mission was, who the people were, why you're going after them. Whereas the troops or the unit, not need to know basis, but essentially it's more need to know basis, right?
Right.
They knew some of the point was just to go a rescue mission, but they didn't know the details.
Right.
So now Lieutenant Joyner goes down. You guys dispose of the sniper. And now there's conversation amongst the unit as to what to do because radio silence was key. Like this is an unsanctioned mission to some degree,
Yes.
correct?
Yes. And the troops, that their thing when the leader's gone, they called headquarters to see what to do. And so instead of me letting them do it, because of Joyner, I told them that I was a lieutenant working with Joyner, and I'm in charge now. So this is the way we go. Stupid me, but that's what I did.
I don't even know what that. I don't know if that's treason. I don't know if that's a felony. I don't know. Impersonating an officer, I know that's a semi big deal, but to do it while in combat with a highly trained unit, you're now saying I am this guy, which clearly you're not. You don't have the credentials, but you say, guys, I'm in charge now.
Yeah.
I'm a first lieutenant. This is the mission.
I knew all about the mission, all the details, who the people were, and everything.
And you said we're not calling headquarters. We're not asking for
No.
permission. We're going to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah,
we're gonna keep going with the mission. And I think, and I wrote it down, but something about Joyner would tell you over and over and over was focus on the mission, focus on the plan, or whatever.
Right.
Something to that extent.
So what we did, we buried him. We put him in the body bag and buried him. We was gonna pick him up on the way back. You know, we couldn't just leave him there. We was gonna take him back with us. So we went on in, got there. And I said I knew all the plan. He talked about it. We talked about it and everything. So I
Where were you going? So you're in the middle of the jungle. You guys had some ideas where the plane crash happened. There was,
Right.
you figured-
Okay. What they did, all of a sudden, right at that plane crash, probably about 60, 70 miles south of there where the plane crashed, they started setting up a real camp with the guard towers, things like that. I mean, they were just setting it up right now, specifically for this, because the Russians had something to do with it and everything like that, you know.
And that came from the intelligence.
Yes.
So in other words, when you guys were going, you knew the mission. You knew that somehow Russians were involved. It wasn't
Right.
just the Viet Cong. It was
No.
there was more than just to the eye for a random plane being shot down.
Right.
And they were setting up a fortified compound, if you want to call it. But again, it's makeshift.
Yeah.
Right. It's plane goes down, and they have a day or two head start on you guys.
Right.
So you're now the intelligence had the map. You knew the area. You knew where to go. Again, thanks to your relationship with Joyner. You knew all that coming into it. So you said,
Yes.
I'm in charge and we're going to continue on the next day and a half, whatever it was, 10, 20, 30 miles in the jungle.
Yeah.
Traveling at night, which is not easy.
Right.
So now Joyner's gone, you guys are going, and it's another day, day and a half, I think, what you mentioned in the book.
We get to the compound that night, and the idea was to take out the towers. You know.
Who's in charge of strategy?
Huh?
So who's in charge of the strategy? So you guys get to the compound, you assess where, you do some recon, I assume. You understand who's where in the towers and all this. Is there somebody, I can't imagine it's you, no disrespect, but is it who's coming up with the strategy for how to go in and do this? Is there somebody on the team that's the two sergeants?
No. I told her.
You did it.
I told them what we was going to do, how we was going to take, because I had an idea. You know, I'm not stupid, but like I said, I'm not the most. I do a lot of stupid things in my life. I'll let you know later about that. But anyway, I told them we're going to go in. You know, I already seen the compound at the glass. You know, I told them, I said, got with the two sergeants and said, what we're going to do, we're going to take out these towers first. And then we're going in. In any other building, you see any VC or North Vietnamese, take them out. We're going in there, going to clean this place out until we find them. Well, we got there right in the middle of nowhere, was this one building, and the lights were on in that building. So we figured that's where they were.
Yeah, I actually wrote that part down when you were giving the orders. I think you said something to the extent of you weren't going in there hooting and hollering. You were basically going in there silent, but it was a death sentence. You were in there.
Yeah.
You're going in there with a purpose, and the purpose is to get your guys and get out.
Yes. And so anyway, we got into the main building where they were, and of course, Mason, one of the sergeants, was and a couple more troops with us. We went in there, and of course, this is where they were doing some interrogation back there in the back, and these guys was in uniform, Russian uniforms. At the time we didn't know what they were. So we brought them out, and then Willis, the interpreter,
The Russian
interpreter, started investigating them with Mason there with the gun watching them. And then we found the prisoners in the other room tied up and everything. Had a little bitty kid, looked like a kid, and this general.
Kid meaning teenager.
Teenager, yeah.
Not a 6-year-old.
No.
But a young, barely shaving type officer.
Yeah.
Right. So you got him in there, and at this point you've neutralized you know, you guys are there and everybody's taken care of. Everybody's still around for you.
Yeah.
Successful mission at this point. You found the hostages. You found two guys randomly, or I guess 2 or 3 people randomly in these suits at the time you didn't know,
Yeah.
now Russian.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got Willis in there with them and Mason. Then what?
Well, then Willis started interrogating them and everything like that, and all they did, they said, you know, the Geneva Convention, we only do this and that. And then one of the guys pulled a knife out of his boot and started toward Willis, and Mason just dropped them both. But Willis got cut on the arm, so we had to doctor him up real quick. Heard the racket in there, so I went in there and seen the 2 Russian been shot. Willis had been cut. One of the medics went and took care of him, and then we after we got all that done and everything, got out of there, got the hostages.
And this was around, I think you said the attack was midnight.
Yeah.
So you're in there, and at this point you're leaving. It's 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever it is after all the commotion.
Yeah.
You now got your 2 guys. You got your it's apparently there were 2 survivors on the plane.
Right.
I think from what my memory said there were.
No, there were 2 other survivors, the pilot and the loadmaster.
Okay.
Those 2 were taken probably to North Vietnam.
I think there were about 7 or 8 people on the plane.
Yeah.
So the plane got shut down. 4 of them survived. The two folks that you guys are after are in that encampment.
Yeah.
Whereas the other 2 were to be determined where they
Yeah.
lived. Okay.
So anyway, back there in the back during the interrogation was this little Russian. He was a cadet, and he was learning what the KG, you know, he was KGB operative like they were. They were KGB, and he was a cadet learning. He's in some kind of military school or something like that. So he was taken along because they didn't think, they wasn't expecting nobody to come in there. And so, I mean, he just looked like a kid. I mean,
Just an intern.
yeah.
So
But,
they're dropping
I mean,
the ropes.
he looked 12 or 13 to me, but later found out he was 17. You know, so we got him, got out of there as quick as we could, made as much distance there, and we rested the night. Started the next night and everything, and all of a sudden we come under fire and everything like that because the Vietnam Cong had went there, seen everybody dead. They got a bunch of troops and come after us.
Yeah, so to be clear, you guys leave the compound 3, 4 in the morning,
Yeah.
get as far away as you can, sleep during the day,
Yeah.
per usual.
Yeah.
But then somebody, scout or somebody, recognized that there
Yeah.
were, I think you told me in the book, something of 100 plus Viet Cong somebody
Yeah.
coming after you.
Yeah.
So now it's a race to get back home.
Well, yeah, but we knew we was gonna have to fight to start with. So that's when we got on the radio and let them know where we were. We got the prisoners, you know, rescued the hostages, and we need some air support. Well, all of a sudden, then, sure enough, when we got to air support, they sent 2 or 3 helicopters, guys on the thing, just raking them, and then these F4s come in and firebombed them.
All right, so you're running with the team, being chased by 100 plus Viet Cong.
Yeah.
You called in air support. First time in days you actually radioed to let them know what's going on and where you are. But until air support comes, you guys, basically have to stand your ground for a little bit. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
But we had to fight first, and to describe actual fighting and everything, you're scared to death. It's either you or them. And these 2 young guys that we rescued, they knew it. They fought, no hesitance. And later you hear people call them sissies or something like that. But no, they weren't sissies. These guys had to stand up and fight like everybody else did. They didn't back down or nothing like that. And
this is still 30 guys, maybe, now with
Yeah.
plus 2s and the cadet.
Yeah.
And I understand the cadet even, Willis had some conversation or had some words with the cadet too, right?
Yeah. He told the cadet, he said, told him, you might be Russian, but all they can see is a white face when they're coming at us. So Willis cut his hands gave him a pistol.
Cut his hands loose.
Yeah.
Very good.
And gave him a pistol
Yep.
and told him, you're gonna have to fight for your life. And so the little Russian realized, yeah, he never been in combat, nothing
He
like
suddenly
that.
loved the US of A at that moment. And all that you guys had, the 30 plus, he'd rather join your team than theirs.
Well,
So there you go. So you got, and part of that, knowing that these guys were coming, the 100 plus, bad guys were coming at you. You made a decision as well, because obviously you got to stand your ground, and you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So what decision did you make there?
okay, but anyway, we'd already called in sport,
It's on its way.
yeah, and everything. And then once they come in, started taking care of them, we just ran like hell back toward the border. We all got together, got our wounded and everything like that. And before we got back to the border, some of the helicopters were able to land, take the wounded and everything like that. And we just kept going, but we had cover from then on because, and people couldn't understand who these two young guys were, I mean, I knew who one of them was, but anyway, we got back to, just before we crossed the border and everything like that. I told them, I said, now look, we had already recruited Joyner's body. And I said, what we got to tell them is this guy led the mission and got shot
On the way home.
on the way home, yeah. And so he gets all the credit for everything that happened. I said, I'm just a government contractor.
You basically said, I don't exist.
Yeah.
We're going to give Joyner the credit.
Yeah.
We're going to pretend he was here to the last moment.
Right.
And you're trying to cover up your tracks now with the gravity of the situation suddenly hitting you like, oh my gosh, I got to go home and I'm not supposed to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like I said, I didn't know what all kind of trouble I would have got into and everything like that. But it later come out after I got home. They finally figured it out,
Who's they?
the government.
They knew you were there.
They did after it was over with because some people couldn't keep their mouth shut.
How long did that transpire? Was it a month later, weeks later, years later?
Probably about 2 months later.
2 months later. How did you find out that they
But
found
see,
out?
I was already back at TI, so I already had connections and things like that. And so they said, you cannot reveal anything about this. If you do, you'll go to prison and everything like that. So I didn't,
Go to prison. Keep your mouth shut, live a happy life, and have a
Right.
wonderful, normal life.
right.
Pretty easy decision.
Now, I started to bring it down here. I don't know why I forgot it, but when I was a judge in Fannin County, a couple of Secret Service agents visited me, checking on me, said, everything going all right? I said, yeah. I knew exactly.
And this was what time period?
1997. And I said, yeah. I said, everything's fine. No problem.
So the story took place in December of 69. And so here we are, let's just call it almost 30 years.
Yeah.
28, 30 years
Yeah.
later. Some two guys show up.
Just making sure everything's fine. I said, oh yeah, everything's fine. No problem. Said, well, we'll send you a little gift from the White House. So they sent me from the White House a picture of the White House back in the old days in that little thing. And it's got on there Historical Society of Washington, D.C. So I knew who sent that. And then later, about 3 years ago, Pat Fallon, my congressman, sent me a beautiful Christmas card. But I mean, it was on a hardback cover like that, and everything. I asked him about it. I said, y'all getting one like that? No, we didn't get nothing. So I couldn't figure out how come I'm the only one that got one like that I asked all over. Everybody I knew. No,
Did you get that Christmas card from
Pat Fallon.
Pat Fallon?
Okay. All right. And then I do a little research on him. He's in charge of he was on the Armed Services Committee. So that associated with the law enforcement and everything. So I just took it as another hint. But anyway, I told my wife the story, and she said, you ought to put that down. I said, I can't. She said, yeah, you could. So I got a guy, John Parfait, excellent writer. I told him the story, and he helped me put this story out. And so I sent it off to the publisher, and they did some background check and everything on the stories are put in there. So they decided to publish it. So they published it, and like I said, I haven't had no incidents or anything yet.
So earlier it was go to prison if you talk. Now you've written a book.
Yeah.
And I think you told me, why now? I think you answered it before we started.
Well, I'm 82 years old. And I got a defibrillator in me. I got another thing in my aorta to prevent me from having strokes. So I keep my mind about me. And so it's just, who cares anymore? What are they going to do to an 82-year-old? It look ridiculous to come after me now.
And you mentioned that I think you said you had to wait for some people to die. It sounds like a joke, but I guess it's true, right?
Yeah.
You had to wait for some folks to die, and now you tell the story. And I think it's notable that the VIPs that you went and rescued are these two young men. You know who they are. You found out who they were. You said you knew one of them at the time. You've since found out. Have you ever tried to make contact? Obviously I know there was some hints being out there, but have you received any notoriety from this book in the last year or so since it's been published, besides these little Easter egg hunts these little Easter eggs that came out long before the book was published? There's little hints and things along the way. Have you tried reaching out to any of the individuals since?
I've talked to them.
You have?
Yes.
Interesting. That is way cool. That is way cool.
Yeah, I've talked to them. As a matter of fact, I made a call to England when I found out somebody had cancer. So I just let them know who was calling and everything. Said, well, she did get the message. That's okay. So
that's awesome. But Tom, I'm telling you, man, I've never read a book. You literally get right into it. It's page 1, page 2, and you're already engrossed, and literally that last page was just mind blowing. And I've been looking forward to this interview for almost 9-10 months. I was waiting to get this set up so that we can do this, and it is absolutely captivating. So now you're an author of 2 books, right? So 2 books. Do we have a third one?
I wrote another one before I wrote this one.
Right. I know that's the first one.
Yeah, it's called Silent Tears. Like I said, it's about my time in the orphanage, the Baptist orphanage, from age 5 to age 10, 1947 to 1952. And like I said, it's hard to believe how things were then. This is right after World War II. And so if you read that book, then you can understand this one a lot better, because you can see where I come from, what made me like I am now, and everything. And I've been a policeman. I was a policeman for about 26 years. I went to the Dallas County Reserve Police Officers School. Then I became Reserve Officer in Dallas County. Then became a regular police officer in Salina. And then I went to Melissa, started in Melissa Police Department, which is now, don't tell how big it is. Sure. At the time, it was 500 something people there, but they had a policeman there. And so I did that. And one night I was driving through Melissa, and I noticed this car kept parking down there like 12 o'clock at night, something like that. So I go up and talk to these guys. And it was 3 of them from Leonard. And I said, so what are you guys doing? I said, well, we work at LTV. That was in Grand Prairie, that's and they always picked a guy up there in Melissa, and they all 4 drove down there, carpool. So I got talking to him, and they knew I was policeman. Said, we're going to need a policeman at Leonard. Why don't you come up here and interview? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, I'm doing pretty good down here, you know. And they said, well, if you get a chance, we're going to do some interviewing. So I said, well, it don't hurt to go up there and look and see what they got in Leonard. Love the town, beautiful little town. It ain't changed in 40 years. I mean, it's still, they're getting a little growth, but population wise, when I went there, it was 1,324, and it's now 1,990 in 40 years. That's what the population growth in there. But of course, all around, a lot of things. But anyway, I went to the interview in there. Found about 20 guys there. I said, oh, shoot, I'm going to get this. So I'm going to interview there. And them 3 guys that I won, all 3 of them were on the city council. And I said, well, 3 out of 5.
You got the job.
I said, I'm probably going to get the job. So anyway, I did an interview and everything, and I left, waited outside, like everybody else did. And then pretty soon the mayor comes out and said, Tom, would you mind coming back in here? Went in there and they offered me a job. I said, now I make pretty good money where I'm at. Well, match your salary that you're making and everything. Well, at the time, the job was city marshal. So at the next council meeting, I had him change it to a police department. So therefore, I was the last city marshal in Leonard, Texas, and the first police chief. And then Leonard now probably got about 6, 7 officers, regular officers, and everything. It's a good police department. And we got a good volunteer fire department. I mean, just everything you like about small communities. And you wonder all these people that go to California, move to Texas, and move to the bigger cities and everything. But that little town up there is still the same. You know everybody up there. You get along good, and although I'm retired and everything, they buy my book too.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So is there a 3rd book coming?
Huh?
Is there a 3rd book coming?
Well, I've got a sci-fi book.
Out of this world. I love it.
but like I said, anyway, yeah, I got another book.
Anything you would have put in here that you didn't? Is there something you look back now, having created this, and
No,
what did you freak? Because this is
no.
memory.
I mean,
This is
I just told a story, and the guy that helped me with this has got books out now too, John Parfait. And in fact, I'm reading his 2nd book. He's sent me a copy of it because he'd like to get my input.
I love it.
Good friend. So anyway,
Tom, it's everything I hoped it would be today. I appreciate you coming down, and I know it's not a hop, skip, and a jump. It's a little bit more effort for you to make your way down here, but I appreciate you doing it and sharing the story. And as I mentioned before, I think I've probably sold easy a dozen of your books, if not more, to friends and family, and it's just absolutely one of the best books ever. And it really is amazing. I wanted to read this one part of it because I was like, man, this is just so poignant. And I think this might even be off the very last page, but it was something to the effect of, let's see here. I think I might have put it at the very top to make sure I did this. I got a lot of notes, Tom. A lot of notes. Let's see. Here we go. I think, let's see, last page. I wrote down the page number so I'd remember. Just confirmed. I could just read from the book. That'd be easier, wouldn't it? Let's see. Yeah, literally, the last page was, the title is Something to Think About. And it says, an individual's choices and decisions affect life, and often that of others, and the ways that are far more reachable than anyone cares to admit or probably even understands. There are rare instances, though, when a choice and a decision made by an individual directly affects not only his outcome, but the outcome of the world. And here in 24 hours, an untold story reflects such a choice for such a decision and such an outcome. I just thought that was so powerful, and it's so true. And if you, again, it's just, I can't say how much this should be in schools. I mean, this is incredible.
Well, I tell you one more thing. Let's talk about it. This book is about 2 presidents and a king. That's all I'm going to say.
It's incredible.
You got to read the book.
Tom, I appreciate you being here, my friend. Thanks for taking the time. And anytime you want to come back, if you're open to it, I'm going to read your 2nd book. And if you're open to it to come down and talk about it, I'd love to do that again with you.
Okay. Be glad to.
All right, bud. Well, thanks for coming.